Okay, let's unpack this. We are doing a deep dive into BrasilAgro's performance for their 2023-2024 harvest year.
Right.
And when you look at Brazilian agriculture, this company is a real powerhouse, but their model is, well, it's unlike almost any other player out there. They do so much more than just planting crops.
That's the crucial context for anyone looking at their reports. BrasilAgro is, it's really defined by its dual business model.
Dual model.
So on one side, they have these massive agricultural operations, high volume crops like soybean, corn, cotton, sugarcane.
Standard stuff.
But the second side, which is just as important, is their aggressive land banking and real estate development.
So they're not just farmers. They acquire rural properties, they invest in them, transform them into super productive land, and then they strategically sell those properties for capital gains.
Exactly. They're running this whole operation across Brazil, Paraguay, and Bolivia. You said it perfectly. It's like a farmer who also happens to be a very savvy real estate developer.
And that unique combo is why this particular year, 2023-2024, was so important to look at.
It was a true stress test. Management went into this period with some significant concerns. They noted that liquidity for land sales was down and global commodity price volatility was just through the roof.
Which means the traditional farming side was facing massive headwinds.
Major headwinds. Yet by the end of the year, the real estate arm was so successful that it really confirmed the efficiency of that dual model. It showed that the structure works, even when the agricultural sector itself is struggling badly.
And we saw some big strategic moves this year that were clearly driven by all that market pressure.
Entirely dictated by it.
Let's start right there with those headwinds. What were some of the toughest hurdles they really had to clear on the operational side?
Well, we have to start with the classic villain in agriculture. Extreme commodity price and cost volatility.
Right.
And this wasn't just a minor fluctuation. It was a serious financial squeeze where global commodity prices dropped, especially for corn. While at the same time, their input costs were rising, driven up by a strengthening U.S. dollar and climbing interest rates.
So a triple threat, basically.
It hammered their margins across almost all their crops.
That sounds like a recipe for a really bad year. I mean, if your margins are getting crushed from both sides, how do you even begin to manage that?
Well, they were, I would say, impressively proactive.
What did they do?
They immediately adapted their product mix. The biggest shift was drastically reducing the area they planted with corn because they realized the market risk just made it too expensive.
And on the sales side?
On the sales side, they intensified their hedging to lock in some prices, and crucially, they made a strategic choice to defer the sale of most of their soybean production.
That deferral strategy, holding on to the soybeans, waiting for a better price, that carries a lot of risk, doesn't it? What if the market gets slumping?
It absolutely does,
Okay.
but it paid off this time. They correctly anticipated that premium prices for soybeans would rise later in the season.
So they managed to capture better value than the spot market was offering early on.
Exactly. It was a gamble on market timing that gave them a much-needed lift.
Okay, so smart timing, sharp tactical adjustments. Now, beyond the economics, this is where the international complexity of their model really shows up. They had a very specific setback outside of Brazil, didn't they?
Yes, that was the second major challenge.
Yeah.
Geopolitical and land dispute risk. They faced a pretty significant operational hurdle at one of their properties in Bolivia due to encroachment.
Encroachment.
Yeah, it was directly related to a local agricultural land dispute near the Guayos region.
And managing land disputes is always messy, but across international borders with different legal systems, that adds a huge layer of complexity.
It means disruption, lost productivity, and certainly escalating legal costs. They're currently using all available legal means to regain normal operations.
It's a real reminder that a diverse portfolio requires constant vigilance, doesn't it?
Especially in their non-Brazilian operations.
Okay, so that's an external risk. Let's pivot inward. The last major challenge seems to be about the organization itself.
That would be the concerning deterioration of safety metrics. Looking at the social pillar in their report, the company noted a rise in both the frequency and the severity of work-related accidents.
And this was for both their own employees and contractors.
Yes, for both direct employees and outsourced workers.
If both frequency and severity are rising, that suggests the existing safety culture just wasn't cutting it. How did they respond?
They treated it as an urgent priority. It triggered an immediate and pretty extensive review of all their safety strategies.
What does that look like in practice?
It resulted in an action plan with 60 specific corrective actions, 75% of which were already done by the time they published this. But to really catch up, They developed a huge new safety training matrix. It contained over 1,141 individual training sessions.
Wow, 1,141 sessions. That number really illustrates the depth of the issue they saw and the massive commitment needed to fix it.
And despite all those hurdles, they still managed to pull off some truly huge wins this year.
Right, and these are the strategic moves that made the year a success, not just a story of survival. So what was the single most impactful event that really validated their entire business vision?
Without a doubt, the first key event was a high-value real estate sale. This one transaction proved the dual business model works, even in a very tough market.
Okay, let's get the numbers.
They sold 12,335 hectares of the Chaparral farm in Bahia for $364.5 million.
That's Brazilian reais, of course.
Yes, babe.
$364.5 million. That figure is massive. As we'll see, it completely changes the financial outcome of the whole year.
It did. This single deal generated huge capital gains and a ton of liquidity, proving that the land appreciation part of their business is the critical engine for shareholder return. It's their internal financial shock absorber.
Absolutely. The land banking stabilized the ship. Now, let's look at their crop strategy. What was the second big move that signaled a change in what they rely on for the long term?
That was their strategic diversification into sugar and ethanol.
Okay.
They leased over 7,000 hectares in São Paulo to get into the sugarcane market. And this wasn't just about planting something new. It was about injecting more security and predictability into their portfolio.
Because the sugar and ethanol mix responds to different market drivers than grains, right?
Exactly. It's tied more to energy and local demand, which is less volatile than the global grain market.
And didn't that diversification immediately pay off on the ESG front as well?
It did. As a bonus, this new activity brought in $2.65 million in revenue from decarbonization credits.
These are the CBIOs under Brazil's Renova Bio program.
That's right. Think of them as credits for producing sustainable biofuel. So they diversified, added a more stable crop, and immediately tapped into a new ESG revenue stream. That's just smart business.
It's leveraging policy for profit. So what about long-term resilience? What was the biggest investment they made to future-proof their land?
That would be the major investment in water and technology infrastructure. They issued $165 million in debentures.
Debentures, so corporate bonds.
Right. And they were dedicated specifically to expanding their irrigation system by over 4,000 hectares at their Arojadinho farm in Bahia.
$165 million. I mean, given the climate volatility we've talked about, that's not just a capital expense, it's a direct investment in climate risk mitigation, isn't it?
It's precisely that. Irrigation is key to boosting productivity on the land they already have. And just as importantly, it reduces the pressure to acquire and clear new land.
And that tech focus is everywhere too, from what I saw.
Oh, absolutely. They increased their investment in biological inputs, things like biofertilizers, by 50% year on year. That was $9.3 million.
Yeah.
And they expanded 4G connectivity across over 22,000 hectares to enable real-time precision farming.
So they're integrating technology right into the soil.
And that leads us perfectly into the formal ESG framework.
Right. So let's transition to the key things that stood out across the environmental, social, and governance pillars this year.
Starting with the environmental E, we saw, almost unbelievable progress in their low-carbon farming metrics.
Let's get to those numbers because they are genuinely astounding.
They really are. Their net greenhouse gas emissions balance for scopes 1 and 2.
So that's their direct and energy-related emissions.
Correct. It was drastically reduced to just 19,625 tons of CO2 equivalent.
19,000. And what was it before, for context?
Well, to put that in perspective, it was over 220,000 tons just 2 years prior.
Wow. That's more than a 90% reduction. What drove that?
It was driven primarily by less land use change and a 13% increase in carbon removals from expanded plant cover and better land management.
And we saw technology driving this outside of Brazil, too.
Yes, a perfect example.
Yeah.
The tech they adopted in Paraguay resulted in a 70% reduction in herbicide use across 3,000 hectares.
How?
By using advanced optical crop dusting. So they're only spraying the weeds, not the entire field. It's a huge saving in cost and chemical application.
Incredible. But despite that massive $165 million irrigation investment, the environmental risks didn't just disappear, did they?
Far from it. A major risk was explicitly flagged in their report. The Aqueduct platform, which is a global water risk tool, identified several of their key farms as operating in areas facing high water stress.
Including the one where they just invested in irrigation?
Yes, Rojadinho, Chaparral, and Rio de Mayo. It shows that water scarcity is a huge, ongoing risk that even large investments may not fully solve.
It's a stark reminder that tech can mitigate climate risk, but not eliminate it. Okay, turning to socially, what did we see on community engagement and labor?
On the community side, the BrasilAgro Institute renewed its commitment to the UN Global Compact until 2026, which is a big deal.
It shows serious alignment with international standards.
Right, and the Institute ran over 10 projects, directly helping over 9,000 people, mainly focusing on education and professional training.
And for their own employees. We know about the safety issues, but what about formal systems?
Formally, 100% of their workforce, over 2,100 people, are covered by their occupational health and safety management system. The challenge, which they acknowledged, is in diversity and inclusion.
Why is that?
It's mainly because of the remote locations of the farms and the infrastructure needed. It's just hard to attract a diverse workforce to a highly specialized remote job.
And how do they address compliance for outsourced labor, especially internationally?
They launched a new service providers evaluation system in Paraguay and Bolivia this year. It's a crucial control mechanism aimed at ensuring local compliance and standardizing practices across all their operations.
Okay, finally, what were the most material highlights in governance?
The most robust action was strengthening accountability at the very top with the approval of a clawback policy.
A clawback policy, that sounds legally serious.
Yeah.
What does it actually mean for performance incentives?
It's basically their way of future-proofing results. So imagine they award a big bonus to an executive for fantastic quarterly sales.
Yeah.
But a year later, it turns out those results were based on, say, unsustainable practices. This policy allows the company to literally claw that money back. It forces long-term sustainable decision-making.
That is a very strong signal to the market. What about their compliance reporting?
They reported high compliance. 100% of employees were trained on anti-corruption, and their independent compliance hotline seemed to be working well.
But there was a small gap, right?
A small but material one, yes. In their GRI disclosures, that's the global standard for sustainability reporting, they noted that they don't yet monitor anti-corruption training for their own governance body members or their business partners.
So there's a gap in extending that compliance culture all the way up to the board and out to their vendors.
Exactly. It needs to be fully integrated.
We've looked back at a challenging but, I think, successful year. So now, looking ahead, what are the clearest strategic goals for the next harvest cycle?
The first, and I would say the most ambitious, is their strategic commitment to regenerative agriculture.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
They've committed to developing a dedicated regenerative agriculture project at 2 of their farms for 2024-2025. This goes beyond just being sustainable. It's about actively improving soil health, biodiversity, and increasing carbon sequestration. It's a much higher bar.
And given the safety issues and the need to retain talent, what's the most critical people-focused goal?
That's priority 2. Enhancing people development through individual development plans or IDPs. They're using new evaluation tools, specifically the 9-box matrix.
Can you quickly define the 9-box for listeners who don't work in HR?
Sure. The 9-box matrix is a visual tool that maps an employee's performance against their potential. It helps identify high-potential people, those who need more support, and who's ready for leadership.
So it's about creating a clear path for growth and making sure they have leadership ready to go.
And that's critical in a complex, remote operational environment.
That connects right back to solving those internal weaknesses. Finally, what about operational control, especially with those international and water risks?
That's priority 3, and it's really all about standardization. They want to expand their water management controls with things like automatic warning systems for high consumption.
And internationally.
They plan to improve data collection and consistency of their operational controls in Paraguay and Bolivia, directly addressing the complexities they ran into this year.
So we've covered a massive amount of ground here. What does this all mean for you, the learner listening to this deep dive? If you had to distill this whole turbulent year into 3 core insights.
I think the first key insight is that real estate operated as the essential stabilizer. That unique dual business model proved its value in volatile times. The massive $364.5 million real estate sale just completely cushioned the financial blow from collapsing commodity margins.
You can really see it in the number.
You can. If you look at the raw agriculture numbers, their adjusted operational EBITDA margin dropped from 21% down to just 4%.
A huge drop.
A huge drop. Yet, because of that one land sale, their total net income stayed very positive at $226.9 million.
The land appreciation literally covered all the operational risks and then some. Okay, insight 2.
Mitigation is driving diversification. The way they deployed capital was all focused on addressing long-term climate and market risk. The huge $165 million investment in irrigation and the strategic entry into the sugar and ethanol market. It all signals a proactive shift away from relying only on rain-fed commodity grains.
They're actively de-risking the entire portfolio.
Exactly. And finally, Insight 3, which really merges their ESG claims with their business strategy.
Okay.
Sustainability is increasingly becoming operational efficiency. Their heavy investment in things like bio-inputs and precision tech, like that incredible 70% herbicide reduction in Paraguay. It's not just for show. It's being driven by the need for efficiency, cost reduction, and maximizing yield.
So it's no longer just a compliance exercise. It's central to their bottom line.
It is, and it's a key driver of their dramatic GHG reduction success.
That's a fantastic summary. As we wrap up, one final provocative thought for you to chew on. Given the company's strong financial cushion from that massive land sale, how much immediate pressure will they truly feel to accelerate those ambitious but costly regenerative agriculture goals if commodity markets happen to improve next year?
And conversely, considering those escalating water stress risks we identified on their key farms, is their $165 million irrigation investment actually enough to future-proof their operations against shifting climate realities? Or is water security about to become the single biggest constraint on their long-term growth?